Hello, everyone. I'm sorry that I can't be there with you live, but I'm very happy to have the opportunity to participate in this program. It concerns cultural heritage, creativity, and education, three things that are very dear to my heart. So today what I would want to talk to you about is a program in design education for artisans that I founded and directed for 15 years, and to talk specifically about how the program strengthens cultural heritage among the traditional artisans to whom it's directed, and what methodologies we use to encourage their creativity. Today in Kutch, artisans have become workers. Now, how did that happen? Um, Even among artisans themselves, they will often talk about commercial craft work in the same terms that they speak about manual labor. Traditionally, artisans in Kutch designed and created the work that they made, and they created it for a very specific, intimately known clientele, usually hereditary clients, and they delivered that work to them. So there was an ongoing uh, ecosystem, a system of relationships between the maker and the user. And it was a community-based, horizontal sort of structure. Now, in the 1950s, when India began nation building, it concentrated on industrialization. And that industrialization brought industrially produced goods into Kutch and all over India. And the traditional clients began to prefer those industrially produced alternatives because they were cheaper and often perceived as longer lasting, although maybe they really weren't. Um, and so, along with industrialization came design as an entity that is separated from the whole process of creating. And trained designers were encouraged to work with craft. And somehow in the craft sector in India, design is always spoken about as design intervention, which implies a sort of hierarchy, right, between the designer giving the designs and the artisan doing implementing them. The designers also used industrial goals, which are to manufacture faster, cheaper, and in more standardized ways, which is quite different from the way craft was originally produced. And so craft became labor. Artisans became workers. And you see in the lower right-hand corner, I have a photograph of a weaver weaving, but it's only of his hands. And this is often how artisans have been portrayed, as hands without a head. So in that process, cultural heritage becomes commodity. With the separation of concept and execution, the value of cultural heritage was lost. Merchants wanted faster, cheaper, and more standard products, and that resulted in the transformation of cultural heritage to commodity. Weavers who could create a beautiful blanket, a tableau like the one seen on the left side of the screen, were now oftentimes asked to just produce plain yardage, which doesn't require creativity or even any thinking. And embroiderers who would create a beautiful batwa like the yellow and white one in the center of the slide would now be asked to work on printed patterns of motifs that had nothing to do with their tradition. So there was a complete devaluation of the cultural heritage aspect of craft, and it became a commodity. Traditionally, textiles were made slowly, one by one, and the goals, very different from faster, cheaper, and more standard, were to make the most beautiful textile possible, with the most value possible, and to last a long time. So artisans were bereft of comprehending the commercial aesthetic. They didn't really understand what it was that they were supposed to produce. They lost a sense of value for their own cultural heritage. And workers they became workers in their own tradition. They relinquished agency. I saw myself a master patchwork and applique artisan say, "Tell me what to do because I don't know." The result was devaluation, of course, loss of cultural heritage, but finally, in the end, artisans began to leave their traditions, sometimes at the rate I've heard 15% per year. And the reason is partly that they don't get adequate remuneration, but also I think largely because they don't get the recognition that was so intrinsic to traditional craft, that personal recognition. Who designed cultural heritage? I began to think like that. We see these examples of Kutch cultural heritage in museums all over the world. Who designed it? What is it that designers have that artisans don't? And that led me to think about starting a design education program for artisans. I began the program in 2005 as Kalaraksha Vidyalaya. Today, it operates as Somaya Kala Vidya in Kutch. The idea was to reverse the direction of valuation. I felt that the core strength of artisans, the cultural heritage, was grossly undervalued, and the artisans themselves as well. And I thought that education could reverse this direction. The concept was to value tradition as cultural heritage and to value traditional knowledge as a prerequisite that would enable traditional artisans to take a course in what is usually understood as higher or specialized education. Today, the program operates as Somaya Kala Vidya, and it's for working traditional artisans of Kutch. I think the main thing that I did was to make it accessible. I thought in terms of language, money, and time. Those are reasons. There are, of course, design schools in India, many, and good ones. But because the language of instruction is usually English, artisans cannot access it. So we made the language of instruction Hindi or Gujarati. Money, does it need explanation? Design school fees are expensive, beyond the reach of most artisans. We made the fees normal. And then time. Working traditional artisans, it's not a hobby for them. They cannot get away from their work for a long time because it's their livelihood. So what I did was structure the course in modules. 6 2-week modules, very intensive instruction where the faculty and the students live together and just completely focus on the subject at hand. And it's spread out over a year. So I also should say that the scheduling of those modules takes into account the lifestyles of artisans. So again, it makes it accessible to them. They can come to the course. And I think the sustained input, the fact that it's over a year is important. In between the classes, students go home with assignments that are designed to ensure that they have understood what they learned in class and can implement it directly in their ongoing work. And I think if you take a workshop, it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. But over the year, that really gives artisans the opportunity to absorb what they're learning. And then the third thing I think that is a success, it makes the success of the program, is practical application of theory. No doubt we teach theory, you have to teach theory, and we have professional educators who are visiting faculty in the Institute. We also have local faculty who are graduates of the program and act as a liaison between the visiting faculty and the students. And we ensure, though, that whatever is taught in theory in the class is directly implemented into the respective craft media of the students. And we have studios at the Institute. And so I think that's also very important. to artisans really comprehending what it is that they're learning. From the beginning, the goal was, of course, to ensure economic sustainability, but also, equally important, to ensure and strengthen cultural heritage, the sustainability of cultural heritage. And so I began the course with a board of master artisan advisors, and they ensure that whatever we do supports that cultural heritage rather than obstruct it. And we engaged the master artisans to teach students about their cultural heritage. In the beginning, I thought that since they're traditional artisans, that wouldn't be an issue. But as time has gone by, the younger generations don't know as much about their tradition. So we engaged the master artisan advisors to actually teach about the tradition. And for example, here we have Dr. Ismail Khatri, who is an Ajrak master artisan, and he's explaining a malir. And then and down below there's a close-up of that malir. So what he's telling the students is not just about the textile, but the whole context, who used it, the maldaris who used it, when they used it. And then he goes on to show that the motifs, the design vocabulary, actually narrate the lifestyle of the people who use it. And this is, this usually blows people's minds. And the artisans are very, very much engaged, and they grow to love their cultural heritage. So we also begin with the foundation, with the understanding that artisans are creative. One has to understand that tradition always evolves. It's not static. And so we then engage the artisan students in how to innovate within those traditions. And we teach them to tap their creative capacity. I think I was talking to some design educators here in the U.S. recently, and they said that their experience was that students are afraid of creativity, which really stopped me in my tracks. I thought, that's not at all the experience that I had with our artisan students in Kutch. They love the opportunity to be creative, to innovate. And so I think some of the things that we have done to ensure that creativity can be maximized is, first of all, there's no right. First of all, is to understand the artisans as creative, right? To believe in them. Secondly, there's no right and wrong. Whatever they do is okay. The point is to explore and experiment, and we create a protected time and space so that, and we encourage each student to find his or her own interpretation of a shared cultural heritage. One issue for artisans today is reconnecting to markets. As I explained earlier, the original markets were very well known and close at hand, and artisans just effortlessly adapted as their clientele adapted. But now those markets are distant and not so well known. So we have a course in market orientation. It's not marketing, market orientation, understanding the market, where we take the students to Ahmedabad and introduce them to a range of different shops to understand that there isn't any one such thing as a market, but there are segments. We also take them into homes so that they understand who the end user is. That was very important to the traditional ecosystem, understanding the lifestyle of your clientele. And then we close that loop at the end of the year by holding an exhibition of the collections that the students have developed over the year in Ahmedabad, so that they can see how well they did in understanding or guessing at the taste of the targeted market. So again, we respect the students as guardians of cultural heritage and as creative artists, and we try to extend that also to the community, because cultural heritage is not the property of any one or even any group of individuals. It's the property of the entire community. And to build, first of all, I wanted to build an alumni community, and then secondly, to ensure support from the greater artisan community. So what I did was institute at the end of each course an alumni jury in which we invite graduates to come and give feedback. The students present what they've learned. It gives them an opportunity to review that. They present what they learned, and then they get feedback from the alumni. And the alumni are very generous. It's not like they feel like, oh, here's the up-and-coming competition. Not at all. They share what they understand, and they also participate in the education. And then at the end of the year, after the 6th course, we invite the family. Why? Because we want the family to know what their family members are learning, and to also engage in. And they also ask questions and give feedback. And that also helps to ensure that the cultural heritage aspect of the contemporary craft is maintained. Finally, at the very end, we have a professional fashion show. It's choreographed by a professional choreographer, and thousands of people attend it, mostly from the local community and mostly from the artisan communities. And it's an opportunity for everyone to understand that craft is creative and can be contemporary and fashionable. One important thing to remember is that cultural heritage evolves. It is not static. It always evolves. But I think even more important is that the inheritors of that heritage, the artisans themselves, have to be the ones that determine how it evolves. There are many options for evolution, but it's their cultural heritage, it's their property. They need to be active in determining how it evolves. And I think what we do is give our students a love of their traditions so that they would never harm it, and the confidence to create, and a voice. I have here the statistics of how many graduates we've had in 14 years. The 15th year is not yet complete. 197 graduates, men and women of different craft traditions. And recently, in 2019, we conducted a survey, a impact assessment, to see, what has the impact been over that period of time. And it was a qualitative, value-based survey. So there's not just about how much people are earning, but more their sense of value. So we began with understanding how graduates define success. They talk in terms of being able to negotiate, being able to be recognized. Again, going back to that personal recognition was so important to traditional craft. Being able to be creative and having a voice. They also talk about money, but that's not even a primary goal at this point. So, naturally, we found some tangible benefits. The first one is that the graduates do realize the value of their tradition. They talk about sort of the epiphany of realizing the value of that tradition. I have some quotes that I'm going to read to you for each of these benefits that we observed in our impact assessment. This is from Prakash Naran Siju, who is a weaver, and he says, in the course, we realized the value of our own work. For homework, we sat with our elders and asked them the history and meaning of motifs. Now, that would have happened sort of organically, traditionally, but because so many changes have happened in society, it needs now to be a bit institutionalized. Confidence. Confidence is always a byproduct of education, of good education. This is from Khalid Usman Khatri, who is an Ajrak printer. Before, I was afraid, will my work be appreciated? I learned how to get inspiration, and I lost my fear. Now I know I can derive a design from anything, and we hear this again and again from the graduates. So that confidence to be yourself, to have your own voice, that's very, very much a part of the education program. Economic benefit, of course, I said it wasn't a primary goal, but it certainly is a goal. And the word on the ground is that anyone who's taken this course has built a bigger house and a bigger workshop. And we have exhibitions at the end of every course. And also we introduce artisans, we connect them to the better exhibitions and clientele that they can then later interact with. Name and respect, again, very, very important. We have our graduates have had many, many honors, the President's Award, the World Crafts Council Award, the Crafts Council of India Award. They have also been able to participate in international exhibitions. The top images from the Fabric of India exhibition of the Victoria and Albert Museum in London later traveled to the United States. They have participated in Lakme Fashion Week. About, I think, at least 15 graduates have participated in the international folk art market here in Santa Fe. Now, we also were looking for intangible benefits. How has the course been able to enhance the understanding of craft traditions as cultural heritage? And I think one key thing that has happened is the emergence of the artisan designer. It's a new genre of artisan, different from artisans, different from designers, in that they both design and create craft work. And I think in that we see a desire to realize a collective value of individual innovations developed through that common experience of design education. They recognize that whole, the original traditions and the new innovations, all as part of cultural heritage. Satisfaction beyond monetary gain. Many times artisans will talk about why they are practicing craft. And this is a quote from Purushottam Premji Siju, who is a weaver. And he says that, "I felt that more than money, I should enjoy the work. When I started weaving, I earned rupees 700. And previously he had worked in a company and he earned 1,500 there, double. He said, I didn't go back to the company after taking the course. I went where I found satisfaction, and now, of course, he's earning a lot more than he did earn in the company. But you have to have the faith that that will happen, and the satisfaction. Okay, appreciation of individual creativity, mutual respect, trust, and collaboration. This is very important. In the traditional setting, artisans had their hereditary clientele. There was no concept of competition. Now, when they're operating in a cash economy, there is. One weaver said that previously when they would go to an exhibition, all the weavers from Kutch would have the same products. That still is there to some extent, not from our graduates. And here's what Purushottam Bai again says. We show our work to each other. We ask for feedback. Today, each of us does different work, and so if a customer brings a photo of, say, someone else's work, we tell them that's his work, and we give his address. We're clear, and this is the benefit of education. Feeling a responsibility for the development of the community. The graduates understand that it is a community, and Tulsi Ben, who is a Suf embroidery artisan, says, now our art is recognized and we are recognized, and so I encourage others to do what I did, to become educated, so they won't feel that they want to leave the tradition. They can learn and they can grow. Okay, concern for the environment. Now, I think, when the students learn to think beyond themselves, then that gets extended to the environment as well. And there is among our graduates a great sense of concern for the climate change crisis that we are all experiencing. And so they think about how they can have less of a carbon footprint. So here's Prakash Naransiju, who is a very skilled natural dyer now. And he says overproduction results in wasting water. Natural dyes are good for customers and the environment. So finally, I think that culturally appropriate design education can strengthen and sustain cultural heritage. It provides graduates with a sense of personal and community worth, and it enables them to work with collegial respect. They have confidence, they have respect for each other. They know that as traditions diversify, the market also expands to accommodate, and everyone benefits. They feel a sense of responsibility for the development of the community and the tradition. They encourage each other to take the course and to practice their distinct innovations. And the best part is that the next generation is returning to their tradition. This is Dilip Bai. His father, Dayabai, was an early student of the course and then a faculty member for many years. And Dilip Bai, his father, although his father encouraged him to study further, he said, "What will I do studying? I'll get a job. My boss and my colleagues will know me, and that will be the end of it. If I'm an artisan, the whole world will know me." This is what he observed in his father. And so that made him feel like becoming an artisan was not the last resort, but the best choice. So in final conclusion, what I would like to say in summary is what I think works in the program. First is to respect the artisans as creative people and to respect their cultural heritage. Teaching within the context of their lives makes it possible for the students to attend the course. Practical application of theory, and that goes, as I mentioned earlier, theory into the studio, in the classroom, but also working toward real events. The students work toward an exhibition, they work toward a fashion show, and that highly motivates them. And I think all of this is important to strengthening and sustaining cultural heritage. And I hope that we have made our contribution to that and continue to. Thank you.